My name is Dr. Kathy LaFortune, and I am a forensic psychologist. Anytime you're curious about something, you follow that path till you get an answer, until you find an answer that you really can live with or understand, and it helps you understand more about the world. I remember being in the end of third grade, a long time ago, and our teacher said to us, "I'm going to teach you about long division." And I was so excited about that. I don't know why, I just was. I thought, this is really interesting. But it was hard. It was really hard at first. You know, after Mrs. Cagle described long division, I was like, okay, well maybe I can do this. And so I remember being with my classmates in the room and we were working on these problems, and then suddenly it clicked. And all I can tell you as aspiring young women who may go into a STEM career is that that's the best part about being in science and math, is that time that it clicks. Because up until that time, you struggle and you think, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this math problem. I can't understand science. It's too hard. It takes too long to learn. And if you just keep at it and at it and at it, and after all those hours of work, suddenly the light goes on, and the feeling that you'll have is amazing, because you've learned something about the world. You've learned how to negotiate the world, how to make the world a better place using those skills. And so, you know, from that third grade and that one little experience, it's just kind of a thought I had that I'd like to share with you today about how difficult it is, but how rewarding it is at the same time. Math and science, they're wonderful, wonderful subjects to learn in school, but they're hard, and they're hard for people that are really smart, and they're hard for all of us. I always had teachers that I looked up to, that I went to, that were helpful, that were collaborative, and that's one thing I would recommend to you all, is that you have someone who can mentor you. And that can be anybody. It can be a relative, it can be a teacher. And I was very fortunate in Tulsa Public Schools, in grade school and junior high, to have wonderful teachers who were always mentors to me. Mrs. Cagle in the third grade, and then Miss Taylor, who was my science teacher, who was fantastic. And after I got out of grade school and got into college, I'd go back and visit her, because she had such a profound influence on my life and making science something that was fun to investigate. And that's another aspect of being in a STEM career, is that you become a detective. No matter what aspect of math and science you get into, you're a detective. You're there to figure out a problem. So by the time I got to junior high, I'd started taking Algebra 1, and it was really boring, and I thought, I've got to do something different. So I went to my teacher and I said, do you think I could go into a different algebra class? And she said, you can try it if you want. And so I did. I went to Algebra 2, and I was really scared about it, because I wasn't sure if I could do it, but the other class was pretty boring. So I thought, well, I'm going to try this. And I had a little notebook, and on this notebook it said, anyone can quit. It takes a champion to keep going. And so when I got into that class, and my teacher was Mrs. McVeigh, I would go in every morning when I could, and she would go over problems with me, because Algebra 2 was hard. It's not easy. But to have somebody like that in my life who was a mentor to me was fantastic. And you know, I'm sure at 7:30 in the morning when I'd go into her office in her room, she probably had other things to do, but she took the time with me. And I am sure that at your school, wherever you are, there is a mentor, a teacher who's willing to take time with you. My uncle happened to be a mechanical engineer. And back then, when I was growing up, teenage years, women really were not encouraged. But my uncle was one of those people that said, you can do this. And he never doubted me. And so when I got into math in high school and got into calculus and pre-calc and functions and all those wonderful classes, and I'd be sitting there at my desk thinking, I can't do this calculus problem, I would call my Uncle Frank. And he was always there for me. And in fact, I wanted to show you this because this is something he gave to me when I was in probably 5th grade. And this shows how much technology has changed. This is called a slide rule. And we used to actually use these to do multiplication problems and division. And there are different scales on here. And engineers, this is what they used to use to do calculations. And my uncle had so much faith in what I could do eventually with my career that he started to give me things that were important to him to share with me. And so all I would say to you is, maybe there's someone in your family who you can connect with like I did with my uncle. I don't think I'd be sitting here today with my PhD if I hadn't had him and the teachers who've always been with me to guide me through. And there are people out there like that for you, for all of you. Well, actually, when I was in college, I worked for McDonnell Douglas Corporation, which is an aircraft company. They make planes. The DC-10, that maybe you've heard of, it's an older plane, but they still fly them. I got an opportunity one summer to go work at McDonnell Douglas. I got to walk on the wings of a plane. I got to work on a fuel tank, constructing a fuel tank that would hold a certain amount of fuel for the plane. And those are really important things to people. If you think about the people flying those planes, they need to work right. And that's why you, as a young scientist or major in mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, some aspect of science, always go for the stars. Apply to these companies for the summer. Get those summer jobs, because that is going to give you the reality of what it's like to work in a big company doing science. And just take on that task of finding someone that you trust who can introduce you to mathematics and science, because I promise you, once you get into it, it's hard. It's very hard sometimes, but it's definitely worth it, and it's doable. You have to have confidence that no one can tell you you can't do it, or that you won't be able to figure out the answer, because you can. You're needed in this field to go from the slide rule to a calculator on your cell phone. This is what we do. And I promise you that if you get into this field, you will absolutely love it, and it will stay with you forever. And one of the reasons it stays with you is because you learn how to do what we call critical thinking. And critical thinking is an aspect of our thinking that allows us to make good decisions in any field that we enter into, whether it's psychology, whether it's social work, whether it's math, science, medicine, law. Critical thinking is what will allow you to be successful in life. And when you get established and you're working for a company, you're going to look back and say, all those hundreds of hours that I spent in the library doing math problems, doing science labs, doing science projects on analog braking systems, and all these other wonderful things you're going to get to do, you're going to look back and say, it was worth it, because I am now an engineer. I am now a mathematician. I am now a researcher, or I am now a scientist.